And here we go. We are live. A little bit of technical issues. Again, I'm just still getting used to all this stuff. But welcome, everybody, to the post-Raw edition of the Off the Mic Wrestling Show on YouTube by Mike Mayer. Thanks again for tuning in. What a night. What a night from Ottawa. This was quite the show. So many notes, so many thoughts. But let's start at the end. Widely expected, especially when you put Dominic and Liv on a tag team against Zelina Vega and Rey Mysterio in the main event of a loaded show that included CM Punk and a lot of stuff from Bron Breakker. You had to think something big was going to happen here, and it did happen. Mami Rhea Ripley is back after just after WrestleMania being put on the shelf. This was widely expected that it wasn't going to be particularly something extremely long term, but this was so well executed. I know it's not for everybody with some of the sexual undertones that it had to it, kind of reminding you of the whole Stephanie McMahon, Triple H with Trish Stratus, a little bit of those undertones in this thing. But this was well done. Dominic, the story of this thing was Dom would resort to anything, and that meant even teaming with Liv Morgan, who he really just wanted to try and just quell her advances and do anything to beat his father. Didn't beat him at WrestleMania the last 2 years. Didn't beat him in singles competition last week. And here we are in the main event. Liv throws a chair in to get the distraction. In the words of Taz, a yam bag sitting on the top rope. Ray falls down. We get a frog splash. 1, 2, 3 in the pin. There's a celebration. Dom looks like he hugs Liv, and then they're set to kiss each other. And then This Is My Brutality goes through the entire arena, the Canadian Tire Center in Ottawa, and everybody. This was not actually necessarily one of the best crowds for Canada that I can remember. This crowd went crazy for this. And to have Rhea Ripley back, I'm not saying that the women's division was struggling, but they were kind of like, especially on Raw, and actually even on SmackDown a little bit, it's been kind of spinning its wheels because we're trying to get to this portion at SummerSlam where you're going to have Nia Jax and Bayley. And also have Tiffany Stratton presumably roaming around with the briefcase that she won, the Money in the Bank briefcase she won over the weekend. And then you've got Liv Morgan, who's just kind of been like, since getting past Becky Lynch, she's really kind of just been trying to, like, get in the good graces of Dominic, get in the good graces of the Judgment Day. And it's really kind of, in some ways, a little bit like Rhea Ripley when she first won the championship. But Rhea was a lot more authoritative in sort of like getting things that she wanted. Liv was trying to appeal sexually a little bit. So that's why the storyline wasn't really for everybody. But to execute it this way, where Dom gets everything that he wanted to beat his dad. This has been a chapter that he's been trying to get through for the longest time. He gets it. He's about to cave in to Liv Morgan, and then Rhea comes back. This had been hinted all night. It was hinted across the internet, but also with the element of Damian Priest. Damian Priest kind of hinting that this was kind of in the works. He got a phone call. He also told the Judgment Day, hey, there's a surprise. Dom's going to pay for his actions. So, and also there was an interesting moment. They tried to get a camera in there really quick. They couldn't pick up the off microphone stuff that happened. Maybe that'll get picked up in post potentially of what happened. And we couldn't really catch what Rhea said. Like Dom was trying to hug her and we kind of just cut it off there at that point. So, but this was great. And it clearly sets the stage for the road to SummerSlam, at least for the Women's World Championship. I would imagine if Triple H wants to build a card more longer than 5 matches. By the way, I'm going to have, if I have a little bit of time here later on, if you guys will indulge me, I need to call out some of the AEW and just the timer marks. There was also kind of just an egregious take from Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez about the Sol Ruca and Kalani Jordan match that I need to get into at some point here tonight as well. But would love to hear from y'all in the chat and any comments and concerns if you like. I'm going to run through kind of some of my notes here throughout the night, kind of just, some of the brief points that really stood out. But this was a really good show, capped up by a really good angle with Rhea Ripley returning after a few months away. A great pop as we expected. Like I said, within the next 4 to 6 weeks, we were expecting to see two of the biggest pops maybe in the modern era. And this lived up to the billing from Rhea returning on Liv. And Liv, by the way, credit to her, she got out of there. She wasn't the fastest person on this show because that went to Bron Breakker, who I swear to God, men his size should not be able to move the way that they do. But there was a lot of running on this show. Braun Strowman did a Strowman Express thing. Like there was a lot of a lot of calisthenics going on in this show. So anyway, let's go back to the top because the other big angle here that really came off at the start of the show, and that was CM Punk kicked off the show, sort of kind of gloating about, and we expected him to kind of gloat about, getting Drew McIntyre suspended. So he comes out, actually does a nice little gesture. One of his greatest rivals pays respect to John Cena and says, "Hey, I'd like to lace it up one more time with you before you go." If you saw on social media, Punk actually had a really nice moment with Cena, and they had a great feud over a decade ago that really, I think, defined CM Punk's career. So I would love to see Punk and Cena go at it again. So that was nice for Punk to pay respect to him there. Then he calls for Adam Pearce and basically calls him out, says, "Hey, I want you to lift Drew's suspension. This is beyond personal." As expected by me, I didn't think Adam Pearce was coming out there. Out comes Seth Rollins. Punk threw his microphone up in the air. It hit the ground. You could hear it. So Seth does his entrance. Punk goes down to commentary and basically starts mouthing off at Pat and Cole. Gives Cole a hard time for calling him by his government name, Phil. So that was funny. So Seth gets in the ring. He cuts the promo, basically says, "Hey, not everything's perfect." He even commented on the official mistake, which I actually think is a nice move by WWE to just not gloss over it here and just realize, hey, I mean, Triple H acknowledged it in the press conference. It's not like, hey, there was a mistake that happened. This is what it is. And he sort of just says, "Hey, you got to expect it from me. I'm pissed off because you cost me a chance at the World Heavyweight title moving forward." And Punk tries to appeal to him and basically says, "Hey, I'd like to think that you as a dad and a husband to Rue," which, invoking his kid, and Seth had a look on his face like saying, "Don't talk about my kid, you punk." And Punk is like, "Oh, Dad, as a husband, you would understand what I'm going through." And Punk actually brings himself to say, "I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean to screw anything up for you. I have a singular focus." He even talks about, even though you have a family thing, this guy has a bracelet with my wife's name and my dog's name on it. And he says, "I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean to screw anything up for you. I have a singular focus and I understand that you do too. And I screwed that up and I'm sorry." Then he pauses for a little bit, turns away, turns back around. He said, "But because it's you, I can't really be that sorry, can I?" And it's just like quintessential disingenuous CM Punk. He doesn't give a crap. He had a moment where he basically said, "Hey, there's fans on this side of the building, on the hard cam side," basically. And AEW fans were like, "Oh, he's taking a shot. He can't keep it out of his head." It's like, Punk can do whatever he wants. And all the internet people are just going to pop for it. Like, yeah, WWE fans aren't going to care because they don't care about that crap. It's in a company that nobody really is caring about anymore. It's not registering. Just worry about your own crap. Like, Punk's just egging the bear. Like, he's just that, the Tom Hardy, classic meme on Twitter, "That's bait." That's what Punk's doing. That's what he does. He's a troll. That's why we love him. So, Seth responds. He basically talks about Punk being a gaslighter. And you probably haven't apologized for anything because nothing ever is your fault. He also talks about, the world shouldn't just revolve around you. Actually, you got to be the dumbest smart dude I've ever met in my life. You haven't figured out the world does not revolve around CM Punk. Seth cooked in this segment. And then he basically says, "Hey, you want your pound of flesh against Drew McIntyre? Because this is the whole thing. Hey, you want to get to Drew McIntyre, but you're not accounting for collateral damage, and that's not going to happen on my watch." And Seth alludes to that he could take a cheap shot, but I know your fragile body isn't 100%. And when you're cleared, you won't even be able to say the name Drew McIntyre before I snap your arm up and put you back on the shelf. This was great. This was great because I have no idea where this is going, because later on in the show, we get more stuff with Adam Pearce. This could be a 3-way at SummerSlam. because all three guys hate each other. We already saw that in Chicago before WrestleMania. Drew clearly is just like a savage all over the place. I mean, we still have unresolved things. Drew could end up going to Punk's house at some point. And then obviously, I mean, the collateral damage part, like I have a sister and like she was trying to wonder, hey, why is Seth in this match if he's not going to win? And I wondered that too going into this match. And you see from this promo and what happened and what transpired that led to was a result directly from what happened at Money in the Bank, where Seth gets is basically an afterthought in the whole thing with Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. So like I said, this was great. A great way to really kick off the show and really set the stage for what's going to be a huge angle moving forward. Then goes right into a Pierce Liv Dom promo. Dom is trying to appeal to Pierce and basically say, and Pierce is apologizing, say, hey, I haven't been able to get to you. I've been busy with all the Drew stuff and a lot of crazy stuff going on here. It's Dom. He's saying, I don't want to team with Liv. I don't know why you want to do this. He's like, Ray and Zelina are on board. Ray and Zelina are on board. Liv asked for this. She wanted to pay back. And like, Dom's just so resistant. And Liv's like, yeah, I know you want to beat your dad. I want to help you. And Dom's like, yeah, I just hope there's some nuggets involved in nuggies. And I was just like, man, this guy's such a geek. Such a geek. It's easy to not like him. So, yeah, I mean, this sort of set the stage for the angle that I talked about at the end of the show. Jey Uso and Chad Gable, really nice little match here to start the show. So Gable, early on, it was a lot of counters, a lot of wrestling. Jay gets control. Jay does a dive. They have a belly to belly suplex from so Jay gets a little bit of control after Chad had kind of done some little chain wrestling to set it up. And then there's a hip toss, a bunch of hip toss attempts. And then Jay gets it done at the outside. Jay then goes for his suicide dive, and you get Gable catches him, hits a belly to belly suplex on the floor. We go to commercial, and then coming out of break, Chad gets in a Dominator and a diving headbutt that gets two. And Chad got a lot of good stuff in here. Jay got in some good counters, but really the finish was really what kind of really defined this match. Jay goes for the Uso splash, but Chad ends up knocking him off the rope and puts him in the ankle lock, and then the Wyatt crackling sound and the lights start to go out, and that distracts Gable out of and lets go of the ankle lock. Jay hits the spear, gets the win. The lights start to go out, and this was a really funny moment. Jay looks out into the camera and basically does yeet, and the lights proceed to go out. Jay gets the hell out of there, and Chad runs away. He's covered in smoke. Nikki Cross had appeared, so that causes Chad to run away, and then Chad, for the first time, because Pat McAfee was supposed to be the designated recipient of these videotapes. There's a videotape delivered by Nikki Cross to the announce table, and it's given to McAfee. And so then we have that. Sheamus talking about 15 years in the business in a backstage promo coming out of this. But first, actually, on the Chad Gable stuff before I move on, it's going to be really interesting to see what path forward. And when we get to the Wyatt segment, I'll kind of talk about this. It's going to be really interesting to see how they handle this, to see if Gable's going to get help early on from presumably Ivy Nile and the Creeds to form the new Alpha Academy, or if he's going to try and go back to Otis in the old Alpha Academy to set this up. But nonetheless, it's really interesting because there's there was a lot of layers later on in the show that expanded beyond this. So we'll talk about it when I get there. But then Sheamus, there's a lot of neat little backstage segments that actually added to the show. This wasn't a lot of throwaway, a lot of filler tonight. So Sheamus backstage with Jackie Redmond talks about it's been 15 years. Crazy to think that it's been 15 years. I remember when Sheamus debuted. And everybody was wondering, really? you're having this guy go over John Cena, but credit to Sheamus. He's really like he turned into like that cookie cutter white meat baby face a few years into his run, won the Royal Rumble, beat Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania, and a lot of people just didn't buy into him. He turned heel. And this new like banger after banger fight night gimmick has just really clicked with the audience and it's really gotten him over. And I give him a ton of credit. He's really molded himself into like really one of the greats in the business. So congrats to Sheamus on that. But so then Sheamus, after talking about his career, Bronson Reed interrupts him. Big meaty men slapping meat potentially. Big E's loving that somewhere. Reed just basically says he's the future, Sheamus is the past, and then Sheamus tries to challenge Bronson Reed, but Bronson Reed had a match against Pete Dunne that was supposed to be next. So then this was actually a pretty solid little match. Pete looked really good, got a lot of his joint manipulation spots in, a lot of hope spots that potentially gave you the chance that they gave you the belief that, hey, Pete Dunne could pull the upset over a guy significantly bigger than him. We all love Pete Dunne. He's kind of gotten lost in the shovel since the name change back, and then he got into the team with Tyler Bate. Tyler Bate's hurt. I hope he's okay. They had a match in NXT, and it looks like he got a little banged up, so he's out for a little while. Finish of the match, Reed goes up for the tsunami, but it gets countered by an enziguri, and Pete Dunne works the arm in the top rope, but then Reed just throws him off of the top rope, and Pete Dunne falls to the mat. The tsunami for the 1, 2, 3. Bronson Reed gets the win here. Reed tries to go for another tsunami in the post match, but Sheamus comes out and brawls, hits a running knee. Dunne gets a kick in, and then Sheamus hits the brogue, and that's it. The baby faces look good here. And then Sheamus actually, this is the interesting point. Sheamus goes to hug Pete Dunne. Pete Dunne says, "Get away from me." And he doesn't want anything to do with them. And it's mentioned, and this is a good little callback for those who don't remember, the Brawling Brutes kind of ended unceremoniously. Sheamus had his match, was a little bit dinged up, had his match with Edge last year, and just sort of left. And that sort of led to like the Brawling Brutes kind of falling out, with Ridge Holland now going back to NXT, Pete Dunne getting the name change and joining up with Tyler Bate. So nice little bit of storytelling there, coming out of kind of like a mid-card match that really was kind of thrown together at the last minute, but at least there was some story here. This is my issue with AEW. You throw these matches in there, they just have a bunch of cool moves and it doesn't lead to anything. This actually kind of made sense because, Bronson Reed's trying to disrespect the 15-year veteran. Bronson Reed beats a friend of Sheamus. Sheamus comes to save that friend, and then the friend, not forgetting what happened to him and him like kind of falling into obscurity for a while, resents him kind of a little bit. It's a good angle. It's something for Pete Dunne. I think more Pete Dunne on television is good. And yeah, I thought this was good for what it was. Like, it wasn't like it's not gonna main event a pay-per-view or anything like that, but this is the type of stuff that you need to have on TV, especially if you're gonna run for 3 hours. If it's gonna be on television, at least give us a match that's actually gonna give us some semblance of a story. So so then a really interesting promo here from with Seth Rollins and Damian Priest. So Damian Priest is backstage with the Judgment Day, so Seth shows up, basically asks the Judgment Day, "Hey, can you guys give us a minute?" Or ask Damian, "Hey, can you tell him to go away?" And Rollins basically says, "Hey, you have to be lucky or good." And you said you were very lucky, but also very good. And I appreciate that you kept your word with the Judgment Day not getting involved, and he will keep his word from their gentleman's agreement. Huzzah for you, How I Met Your Mother fans, gentleman's agreement. But he also says, "Hey, just so you know, you're going to have to be better at SummerSlam if you want to beat Gunther." Damian says he's still got a lot to prove, and when he's done with Gunther, he's willing to give Rollins another shot. The gentleman's agreement doesn't need to happen. He said, "When I'm done with Gunther, I'll go to war with you. Just name the place." They shake. Nice little. It's you're showing more signs of a babyface from Damian Priest here. And you know, you see these signs, and it's like, I'm hoping the crowd starts to react a little bit more to Priest, like, going a little bit more babyface. Because here's the thing. If you guys remember, in 2021, when he came up and debuted in the Royal Rumble that year, had the tag match with Bad Bunny, won the United States Championship from Sheamus at SummerSlam, he was really over. And then they did not know how to book him. They changed his music. They gave him this really weird, like, schizophrenic gimmick. Then it killed all the momentum for him to the point where he had to just turn heel after he lost the U.S. title, ironically, to Finn Balor, who's probably going to be feuding with relatively soon here. And then he joins the Judgment Day with Edge. And really ever since then, it's like, yeah, we still care about him, but it's like, I think there's a lot of talent to this guy. And I think that I hope that people kind of get behind him going into this match at SummerSlam. What sucks in the whole thing is that there's not a soul, I think, on this earth that thinks Damien's beating Gunther at SummerSlam. Like, there's not a soul. Like, the challenge for them is because a lot of people, including myself, thought that it was going to be Seth and Gunther at SummerSlam. And it's not the case. I understand why they did it. They went with the whole collateral damage type deal to make it seem like, okay, Seth's going to go over to the Drew and the CM Punk deal. He doesn't need to be in the world title picture. But if you think about it, it might have been better if he would have went for Gunther, and maybe that's just going to come in the latter portions of the year to put him over, as opposed to having Seth be the champion and Gunther beat him. So maybe it sets up a series of matches. But yeah, the challenge for WWE, and I got full faith in Triple H. He's really handled Gunther, and in a lot of cases, Damian Priest pretty well in this title run. It's just some of these promos, like he had a backstage tape thing that I actually thought was really well executed. But the challenge here is really going to be, hey, can we make Damian Priest look like a viable guy where he's not going to be the underdog, or at least try to convince us that he's not an underdog going into this match against Gunther? Because even though Damian measures up by size and stature and everything to Gunther is a friggin' killer. Like, the guy has barely lost since he's been in WWE. So trying to convince us that Damian can be a guy that we can get behind as a babyface going into this match. And part of this might be just the Judgment Day just screws him and kicks him out, in addition to costing him the championship. Like, there's a lot of interesting elements with this world title scene involving Priest and probably Gunther now, especially with the interesting element. And some people will be like, hey, what was the point of that whole stipulation and the whole gentleman's agreement that they did? Well, it's supposed to establish, hey, Damien's actually a good guy. He's actually a good guy, because they shook on it. It was like I said, hey, listen, man, like I appreciate everything, and Seth appreciated that he held his word, and yeah, none of your guys got involved. So it was really, I think, to illustrate, hey, Seth wasn't going to go back on his word, but Damien was a good enough guy to be like, hey, yeah, that didn't go down the way I expected it, even though he didn't really say it. But it's like, listen, I want to face you again. I don't want that to be the last time. And that shows a true competitor. So that was good. Sami Zayn cuts a promo after this, talks about the win over Bron Breakker, and talks about, okay, the biggest mistake people keep making with me is that I'm the underdog, and that he deserves respect, and that Braun made the mistake of not respecting him. Braun comes out with his great new music, by the way, miles ahead of whatever the hell the second song that he had. They should have never changed his first music. His first music was fine. It was generic, but it was good enough. It got the job done. This music is somewhere in the middle. It's kind of like a rock screamo band or whatever. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's generic or if it's actually a band that made this song, but it sounds way better for a guy like Bron Breakker. I have no idea what the hell Def Rebel was doing with his other thing. So Braun comes out. Sami basically asks why he's there. Braun says there's no reason for him to get a rematch, and starts babbling on for a couple more seconds before he just spears Sami Zayn out of his damn shoe. He speared him out of his damn shoe. And so then Braun proceeds to just maul Sami even more. And and then producers and Adam Pearce have to get in, and then this is great, and this gets Adam Pearce more crap for him. I mean, he's good management, but sometimes there's some real things where they make him look like an idiot or a stooge, as Pat McAfee would call. But Bron Breakker says it goes like hey, look over there. And Bron goes, hey, look over there, or look at the kitty. And Braun proceeds, I swear to God, he probably went at least about 30 miles an hour. I've never seen a man, not even like smaller guys, let alone a guy at 250 pounds. He flew around the corner and then around another corner to spear Sami Zayn again. Like, holy crap. And then out comes Ilya Dragunov. He tries to get in Braun's face and goes to comfort Sami Zayn. And we go to commercial, and then Dragunov asks for Adam Pearce for a match with Bron Breakker. He gets it. We then get the hype package talking about John Cena's retirement. That was great. Like, and I love that they're hyping this up. And I need to say this for a second. I know it's Andrew Baydala, who's great on the internet and is a very good wrestling personality that you should go follow. He does a lot of good stuff on social and across a lot of other platforms, but he made a point saying John's the greatest of all time. Now, you can argue what he's meant to the business, but some people are like, oh, he drove people away. He couldn't wrestle. I was like, there is not a guy in the history of wrestling, maybe not just in the modern era, but in the history of wrestling that was as polarizing as John Cena. There were arenas where it was 50-50 or 70-30 or 60-40. No matter what happened, John Cena was never boring because he would always elicit a reaction. Maybe his character didn't really change a lot, but people still reacted. The kids loved him. The adults hated him. And it was just a different type of vibe about 15 years ago. And now you see, since he came back in 2021 out of COVID, there is just a universal respect for John Cena. And I think it's the whole thing. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. And when John Cena was around all the time, everybody didn't like it because he was always getting constantly pushed. But then 2015, he has that incredible run with the United States Championship where he's just putting on banger after banger. And credit to him for, being willing to get in some matches. I mean, he broke his nose, for God's sake, against Seth Rollins. He had matches against Cesaro, put over Kevin Owens at one point. He had a great match with Sami Zayn. Like, there were so many great things that he did in 2015. And then in 2016, you have AJ Styles comes in from being one of the greatest wrestlers in the world, but hadn't been really known on the WWE scene. And what happens? John Cena put him over twice. I mean, it's just incredible. And then he gets his 16th world title in 2017. And then from then on, really, it's just been like sporadic appearances because now he's fully invested into his new aspect of life. And what I have so much respect from John Cena for doing is he's not one of these people who's just going to hang on forever and understand, okay, I can still offer things to the business, but me being around forever, there's no sense in me just saying, will I or won't I? He's getting in, being near 50. There's not really anything left for him to prove. So why not have this retirement tour and just, let's take it where it takes it. And based off reporting that I've seen, he's willing to take on anybody. Like, I mean, Karrion Kross later in the show mentioned him. There's a lot of people that you go back to Randy Orton. I mean, you've got AJ Styles on the book. CM Punk mentioned him in this show. Bron Breakker, a lot of the young talent could use it. Cody Rhodes, obviously, that would be interesting. But a lot of respect for John Cena. And yeah, some people could say it's kind of like hanging on for glory and doing this tour. I think it's good business. And recognizing that it's going to do some good things, especially considering what he's done in like the last 4, 5, 6 years. Like, John Cena's taken a lot of losses. He's taken a lot of losses. So like, he understands that like he's going to pay it forward here. And this is the right thing to do. So I'm really curious to see what moves out. So then we move into Judgment Day with you got JD and Finn along with Carlito taking on Braun Strowman and Awesome Truth. Carlito low key was pretty much worthless. I mean, outside of the Puerto Rico run-in that he had for the LWO, he was pretty much worthless with the LWO. He's been great since he joined. He hasn't really joined the Judgment Day, but he's been great. Like with his little quips on a lot of the Dom stuff has been. I mean, it's like a lot of double entendres that he's been doing. It's great. And then he doesn't know how to react to the Judgment Day's pyro. So there's some low key interesting stuff. Awesome Troop comes out after the Judgment Day makes their entrance, and they get one up on the baby faces. So Braun Strowman comes in. Truth does his whole ode to John Cena. He hits a 5-knuckle shuffle. He hits that signature slam before he hits the 5-knuckle shuffle. Hits an AA. But then Finn tries to come in and break up the pin, and Truth gets out of the way, and Finn elbows Carlito, I think, close to the yam bags, if you will. And so babyfaces stand going to the break. And then really what this came down to is they were building to the hot tag of Braun Strowman, which is one of the best hot tags in the business. JD, I think, slapped Braun before all this happened, and then Miz crawls and able to stretch out and get Braun in. JD gets thrown a mile in the air and a mile across the ring. Finn comes back in to get some heat after, and he gets a choke slam, and that gets broken up. And then basically Braun double shoulder tackles Carlito and JD in the ring. Truth gets in, and Braun and him do the Strowman Express locking arms, which is funny. And so they run around the ring and clobber everybody. And JD ends up throwing a chair in the direction of Strowman, throwing a steel chair in the direction of Strowman. Strowman runs him out of the building, or runs him like outside near the fans. And Truth ends up gloating, and Miz is asking for a tag. And out of nowhere comes Finn with his shotgun drop kick into the corner and hits the coup de grace and gets the 1-2-3. Miz looks pretty pissed off. Strowman looks pretty pissed off. Fine match. I mean, a lot of goofiness involved here, but that's kind of what this whole, dynamic is, especially with the Awesome Truth, Judgment Day, and even Braun Strowman, who really, let's call it what it is. Braun's really not done much since he got back. It'll be interesting to see if Gunther wins the championship. I know Gunther, as an Intercontinental champion, already faced Braun. It'd be interesting to see if that they revisit that as a potential big meaty man slap and meet potential match for the World Heavyweight title. I think Seth obviously would be a perfect challenger at some point for Gunther if we got there, but I'd like for them to do a little bit more with Braun. I think he's been resorted really to being a comedy character since coming back. Then more advancement in the Punk and Drew McIntyre thing. Adam Pearce and Punk have a segment in Pierce's office. Pierce says he's frustrated that Punk isn't medically cleared, and he's really the big problem, and they want to have a match, but they can't really do anything. Pierce says he will call Drew and says and see if Drew's willing to do business, but Punk can't be there next week, and he tells him to go focus on getting cleared and let him handle Drew. Punk agrees to this. It's announced later in the show. Drew McIntyre will be on the show in Dayton next week on Monday Night Raw. We'll see where that goes. Another Liv Dom backstage segment. This is where things got good. It got really interesting, and depending on your level of tolerance for this stuff, maybe got a little overbearing. So Liv wants to practice, wants him to stop focusing on video games. Dom says he only wants to focus on beating his dad. And so Dom, I guess, falls down on the couch, and Liv is starting to stretch his leg. And Dom is starting to like it. And so then Damian and the rest of the Judgment Day catch him in the act. Damian Priest says you should, and so Liv, I guess, ran out, and Finn tells him, and Damian basically tells him, yeah, you should have done this before. It's not that hard. And Carlito looks down at Dom and basically says, seems pretty hard to me. Oh man. I mean, you could tell Triple H is kind of writing some of these things, because this is like DX levels of like tolerance. I mean, it's almost like a little bit over the line for some kids, but you know, it's pretty funny. And then Dom basically runs out of the room, and basically the guy is saying, "Hey, what do you want to tell us?" Because by the way, in that I didn't mention in the segment involving Seth, after Seth left and they shook hands, Damian picked up the phone and talked to somebody, and you had to think it was Rhea Ripley. So then this was asked about, and Finn and the guys want to know, hey, what's going on? And Damian says, you know, you guys can find out too. And Dom's going to find out there's consequences for your actions, and he just won't tell him what the surprise is. So then we get to the Wyatt video, and it's Bo Dallas talking about, you know, his new family, and they're all people no one wanted, and gave them and he gave them a purpose. He says that they're happy that you remember them, talking to Uncle Howdy here. Bo then says, hey, they need to set the captives free and they need no master. This is obviously leading to something with Gable. Bo is then asked if they are sick. Uncle Howdy says yes. Then Bo says, sick is what they will be. After this, cut to the back where it's Adam Pearce and Chad Gable. Pearce is trying to get into his office, and Pearce says that Gable needs to figure out why the Wyatts are after them. And so Gable basically said, yeah, you should give me a vacation. I'll go do that. Door opens, and it's Bo Dallas, Taylor Rotunda in the office. That's the first time we've actually seen him in his real form, in this new character. Like, we obviously saw him at the Hall of Fame this year. But this is an interesting element that I think they're trying to blur the lines of sort of semi-supernatural and real life. Like this conflict that Bo is having in trying to, you know, create this new team. Damage Control cuts a promo, really setting up their match for later in the night. Then you get Ilya Dragunov versus Bron Breakker. This was a physical, like, this was a banger. A physical, just like this was not like an athletic this was not an athletic display. If you like strong style and you like people hitting you in the mouth, as Pat McAfee would say, you're going to love this match. And so really, like, a lot of physicality. Ilya has a great counter that's scaling Frankensteiner that Braun hits so effortlessly, goes for the coast to coast, but misses. Breakker sends him to the outside, goes for a spear on the floor that he hit earlier on Sami Zayn, but Dragunov kicks him in the face. And then Ilya sets up for the Torpedo Moscow on the outside, but Braun, like another Braun, throws a desk chair, picks up a desk chair and chucks it right at the head of Ilya, and that causes a DQ. I didn't even see where this happened, but Ilya was bleeding pretty bad from his leg. And Braun just keeps beating him up. Sami comes out for the save. But then Braun just kills both these guys and sends them both over the announce table and stays Saul at the end of the segment and gets escorted out of there. All y'all have been were telling me Saturday night, what the hell are they doing with Bron Breakker? That's what they're doing with Bron Breakker. What drives me insane is like this mentality, and I blame AEW for this. Wins and losses mattering and having these rankings. No, like, I understand that there is an element of sport to this, but this is television, and there are stories being told. Like, this isn't like the NBA or a sport where it's like, okay, you're going to go to the playoffs and you're going to do that. Like, in addition to competing for championships, these people are trying to tell stories, like, and entertain people. And Bron Breakker lost because he underestimated the will and the determination of Sami Zayn. And Sami Zayn, true to his character, won the match. What happened? Braun was pissed off and got one up on him, speared him out of his shoe, speared him after running 35 miles an hour around the ring, and he got his heat back. And now you want to see a rematch, right? That's what's going on here. It doesn't always have to be win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. It doesn't have to be that way. It's not hard, okay? Like, this is not rocket science. Like, I've really resented that point was hammered home for so long by AEW. And it worked to a degree for a while. But then when you start getting out of the storytelling element and start just giving people championship matches, nobody gives a crap. So why should we care about wins and losses? It's about, okay, Bron Breakker is a badass and he could go out there and freaking kill a guy in a match. And what happened? Like, he lost a match. He didn't take it very well. And like the monster that he is, he went out and clobbered a guy. Clobbered 2 guys tonight. Be patient. Relax, okay? All right, then we get the Damian hype package that I really liked here. This was probably the most effective thing that they could do. I'm not trying to say that Damian's not a good live promo, but it's just like, I think some of these cases, like it can be stronger to like, utilize it this way with a backstage or like a pre-tape segment. So Damian basically says he didn't ask for any help, and then goes through all of the people he references people who have won by controversy. I think we referenced Io Sky. And I think there's other people that were referenced in the past, and it was great. Like, that was a nice little touch. Says you look forward to the challenge at SummerSlam, that it isn't Gunther, and it's also like, challenging to see if he can match the level of greatness that he's showing. And then also challenges him to meet in the ring, and anything he has to say, he'll say it to his face. So they're trying to, like, I mean, obviously Damian's going to be the clear baby face in this feud. It's not going to be heel versus heel. Because you're already starting to see, you've been seeing this over the last handful of months, that Damian's been like, hey, I don't want the Judgment Day involved in my crap. And so, yeah, this is a good thing. Then coming out of break, Final Testament promo, interesting stuff here. Talk about injuring Kofi. He's out for a while. Old guard, making way for the new guard. Karrion, interestingly enough, invoked the name of John Cena. It was a very simple reference. And then they basically Karrion's talking to Woods, basically saying, if you don't choose the Final Testament, effectively you're going to be gone. Your career's going to be over. And then the New Day is dead, and he's the last one to realize it, brother. This is good. This is good. I mean, nobody cares about the Final Testament, even after all this time. And Karrion Kross, like, listen, I don't think anybody talks about this. Like, I understand why Triple H brought him back. It was one of his last really big projects that he had in NXT before the old NXT shut down. And it got killed on arrival because he was the NXT champion, shows up on that first Raw back in front of fans in 2021. And Vince McMahon puts him out there against Jeff Hardy, who had literally done 50 feet of crap for a while, and beats him on a roll-up in 90 seconds. And also, Karrion Kross shows up in some sort of like gladiator helmet and like some weird getup. It was weird. And I think from that point, and Scarlett wasn't there. There was no like fancy entrance with the dark lights out. There was nothing there. And Karrion was dead on arrival, and he was basically fired like, I don't know, like 6, 7, 8 weeks later. I can't even remember off the top of my head. Since that point, I'm not saying Karrion Kross is a great character. His wrestling's kind of average, but when you go out and get buried like that early, people don't forget that. And it was a really hard climb for him to get back out of that hole, even though he debuted against McIntyre. People still didn't care there. This Final Testament thing, okay, they had a WrestleMania match, but people still don't care. Like, they were in France, and that place was lively right before Backlash. The Final Testament comes out. Nobody cared. That place was silent. It was a ghost town. So, yeah, I like that they're doing this and like kind of interacting them with a very popular team in the New Day. I'm curious to see where this goes. But really, like I said, it's really hard to care about the Final Testament and Karrion Kross because they haven't really given us a reason to care. Another interesting match that was put together last week, Damage Control taking on Lyra, Valkyria, Kaden Carter, and Katana Chance. Really good work by everybody involved there. But Damage Control ultimately gets the win. Valkyria hit her Fisherman Suplex. They did the keg stand finish, but that gets broken up by a really gnarly looking drop kick. I think it was Katana who took it. And gets shotgun drop kicked by Io to break up the pin. That was pretty sick. Kyrie then basically takes out Lyra and Katana on the outside. Io then hits the moonsault on Kaden for the 3 count. But the story of this coming out of this match is Sonya Deville, who we've seen on television, but she finally got physical coming back from her knee injury. aligning herself officially with Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark. This is interesting. Zoe basically yelled at Io, saying that she cost her everything in that match with that sick Michinoku driver in the Money in the Bank match. Super kicks her in the face. Zoe and Shayna hit this. It's like a powerbomb setup where Zoe puts her in the powerbomb position, and tosses him. I forgot who it was, into a knee from Shayna, and then Sonya Deville hits her what it looks like her new finishing move. Great segment there. Zelina and Ray had a segment basically setting up their match. Zoe and Shayna then basically sort of hyped up their new team. And Zoe basically explaining why they finally gave in to Shayna, and Sonya's like, hey, we want to realize their final potential, their full potential. And you get to the point where what they're talking about is like really setting up another tag team or really a stable in the women's division. And Alba Fire and Isla Dawn confront them. So clearly we're setting up more tag teams to potentially, feud. And obviously you've got Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair over on SmackDown that want to get the tag team titles back. So maybe a multi-team match is getting set up. I know they did a multi-team match in Scotland, but maybe something setting the stage for that, or it's just like there's a lot of ways they can go. They need to book this division better. This division was pretty much set up to fail when it got created, but they need to start being better. I understand why they went the route of giving Alba and Isla those titles. It was in their home country. They kind of unceremoniously lost the NXT titles when they merged them. So it's a nice little moment. But I think at some point you're going to see Jade and Bianca get those titles back and hold them for a while and feud with some of these teams like Stark, Shayna, and Sonya. And I mean, you've got other teams that you can put together and potentially make to maybe create a decent division here in the latter part of the year. Then a Gunther package was aired. And man, this was great. This was terrific. Talks about how he grew up not being some child or fanboy of wrestling and realized all he cared about winning. I guess he was like the German Ricky Bobby. If you ain't first, you're last. So the Austrian German, I mean, same difference. And then basically WWE called him in like for NXT UK and said they needed him and he didn't need them. And basically through all of these years, through wrestling in NXT UK, NXT, and now WWE, all he's seen is children living out their childhood fantasies, and he enjoys making people miserable. And he says honor and prestige to the sport is what's really on the line at SummerSlam against Damian Priest. That was great. Really effective way to sell Gunther as being this heel that doesn't give a crap. It doesn't give a crap. And then main event, like I said, really the story of this match was Dom getting finally what he wanted, which was the one thing that he really wanted in this whole character arc with his dad since he split from him in 2022 at Clash at the Castle in Cardiff. Is all he wanted to do was beat his father. Like he had beaten him up and made him miserable, but he had never beat him in a match. Didn't beat him at WrestleMania in a singles match. Didn't beat him in a tag this year. Didn't beat him one-on-one on Raw last week, but he beats him here, and it's because of Liv Morgan. And he was about to give in to all the temptation that she had been showing him for so many weeks and months, and out comes a ghost from Dom's past and also from Liv's past and Rhea Ripley to a nuclear pop, a jolt into this women's division. Because like I said, I think a lot of things, there's been some good stuff, but up until this weekend, really, the women's division on the main roster has kind of been, kind of there. And there's been some good matches here and there. You had the Queen of the Ring tournament, which is great. Naya's kind of really, upped her game and really has shown why she's one of the best re-signings that Triple H has brought in, despite what you may think of her. And Bayley's been a pretty good champion, but not a lot of high profile stuff going on for her. So obviously you've got those two matches. And like I said, Liv, since winning the championship off of Becky Lynch, it really didn't lead to much. Like I think Zelina, if my memory serves me correct, Zelina last week was the first title defense I think that Liv has had. Well, actually, no, outside of Becky Lynch, because they had the match in the cage. That was the rematch off of the Night of Champions match, or not the night, the Night of Champion or King and Queen of the Ring. I'm getting my shows mixed up. It was Night of Champions last year, but so man, it'd be interesting to see social, and I haven't seen anything, like I said, since I'm reacting with you all here. Thanks again here, jumping on the Off the Mic Wrestling Show here on YouTube. Follow the show on X, Twitter, OT Mike Wrestling. Follow me, Off the Mic 28. This was a hell of a show. Really tied a lot of loose ends up from what happened on the Premium Live event. Yeah, I mean, Rhea Ripley's the big story coming out of this. You're setting the stage for a pretty big time match, and like as I expected, Rhea's a star, and she came back to an all-timer of a pop, and deservedly so. She's really built herself into a big star, and it's really going to be interesting to see what this leads to. What does this lead to with Dom? Are they going to put him as be a referee, or what? Or how's he going to factor into this whole thing? How's the Judgment Day going to factor into this whole thing? How's Damian Priest going to factor into this? There's a lot of layers that still need to be pulled back. Damian's obviously gone through at SummerSlam, but yeah, this was good. This was a good angle to close the show. I wish they would have a little bit more time so it didn't seem abruptly cut off at the end, but that is the circumstances of network television, or network broadcast, cable television, whatever. So a couple other news and notes that I've seen come across my timeline before I get out of here. Jordynne Grace, who has shown up in WWE twice this year. It is reported by, it wasn't reported. She did an interview with Matt Morgan on the Gigantic Pop podcast. Very exclusive. Matt Morgan, who former wrestler in WWE and TNA. Jordynne revealed to him that her contract is up in January of 25. So you better believe that Triple H is going to do everything in his power to sign her. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't think she's great, and I think she could potentially be a fit over in AEW. I think if Jordynne Grace is going to make the jump, I think she's going to go to WWE. She's been exposed to the audience twice. She's looked really good. Her type of powerhouse game, I think, could be really utilized in the women's division. Seeing her potentially go up with somebody like a Nia Jax or a Jade Cargill or a Rhea Ripley, or even going back to the Naomi feud that she had in TNA. Like, there's a lot. Charlotte Flair. Like, there's a lot of ways that you can go with Jordynne Grace, and I think that would be a really interesting signing. And I think there's a really strong possibility with this early entry into WWE with the Royal Rumble appearance in the match with Roxanne Perez at Battleground for NXT. I think there's a really strong possibility that you see something happen with her going to WWE next year, which ironically is going to be around the time that they go to Netflix, and there's a lot of change coming in the world of WWE. Okay, so I need to address something here that's been bugging me. I am getting sick and tired of fanboys, keyboard warriors, AEW stands, marks, getting out their stopwatches and timing how much wrestling there is on a wrestling show. Saying, oh, it was a 3-hour show and there was 5 matches and there was a bunch of ad breaks in. All right, let's break this down for a second. Number one, who the hell cares? Who the hell cares? What's your damage? Like, number two, and I can attest to this, it being at an AEW show and a WWE show. And this might be a minor quibble to some of you people who have bigger bladders and can handle, drinking a lot. At some point, you need to go to the bathroom, okay? And when you're at these premium live events, you don't want to miss any of these things. There's not really, and especially under Triple H, there's not really a pee break match. These stories matter. So you're invested in these characters. And so, okay, you need a chance to go to the bathroom or something, or you need a chance to relieve yourself, or you don't want to sit in the same place. It's like, I understand people want to stay in the movie theater, but it's like, hey, sometimes It's just, I mean, that's a minor thing, but it's just like the bigger picture thing is my problem with AEW, especially since they have gone to, the more pay-per-views in a year. They started off with 4 annual events, and now they're up to 9, I think. And yet there was 15 matches, including 5 on the kickoff show, the 0 hour. There's no need to have 15 matches on a show. And the biggest argument I get from people who are complaining that, there's only 5 matches on a premium live event for Money in the Bank. Well, okay. All 5 of those matches actually meant something. You had the 2 Money in the Bank matches. You had the World Heavyweight title, Intercontinental title, and the 6-man tag with the Bloodline going up against Cody, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens, which is a big storyline. And all of this feeds across television. Half the card at Forbidden Door didn't mean jack shit. I'm serious. Like, I could run down the card. I'm not going to put it in front of me. I could have done without the Moxley Naito match. I understand why it was there, because it was for the New Japan, the IWGP Championship. That match was dog crap. That match sucked. MJF in a match that meant absolutely nothing. Because look at where he is now. He turned heel like almost days later. He wrestles Hechicero, a guy who had already lost to Bryan Danielson, who always loses. And you're telling me that I'm supposed to give a crap about that? Like, there was a 6-man tag with Tanahashi tagging with the Acclaimed against the New Elite. I was like, okay, I get you're trying to build a blood and guts match, but it's like, do you need to put that on pay-per-view? Because, okay, Tanahashi's the president. Like, there was just like, if you're going to tell me that you're okay with having a 4-hour, 10-match, 15, and basically if you add on the kickoff show, the 0 hour, 5.5 hours with 15 matches, you're going to tell me that that's okay. But hey, 5 matches in 3 hours is some sort of egregious thing and a crime to pro wrestling. The thing that people fail to understand about WWE and about wrestling as a whole is there has to be some storytelling to it. And Tony Khan, and I have been so critical of him for the longest time about this crap, I'm so critical of it because he just doesn't understand that you've got to keep people engaged from week to week. These matches are like, boom, one match and move on. There's not a lot of storyline progression. There was some this past week, but for most of this year, there's just been a bunch of thrown in together matches, some segments that are here and there, and some stories that are like, I'm not really invested in. And when you throw out your world champion, Swerve Strickland, first night back in a random match against Kyle Fletcher that leads to nothing, didn't even lead us to the Ospreay match. We had to get there through a battle royal or a gauntlet or a casino gauntlet, whatever the hell that thing was. But stop ripping out your stopwatches and timing these events about how much wrestling is on it, how much wrestling is there, how many ad breaks are in, how many things are that. From my personal perspective, I kind of like a little bit of a breather in between matches, because sometimes with AEW, you barely have a chance for like a huge angle, like a Chris Statlander heel turn at Double or Nothing, and then you're on to the next match. At least with this, you can kind of let some of these storylines marinate. It also gives fans an opportunity to kind of catch their breath a little bit, maybe go to the bathroom, maybe go get an adult beverage or something, maybe go get something to eat. Like, it's an event, okay? It's like you have intermissions at like going to plays. I know when you go to the movie theater, okay, there's not really intermissions because these are 2-hour things and you get in and get out and get going. But but for the most part, in those cases, you're engaged with the story, okay? And I just, it's been so frustrating I mean, some of these are just engagement farm accounts, but some of these people really believe what they're saying. And they're like, oh man, hey, this show was better than this show because it had X amount of wrestling and not as much ads. And we care about wrestling and we care about this, and this. It's like, okay, it's fine to think that way, but at some level you can't start overhauling and just cramming in so much crap just for the sake of hammering in crap. Like I said, I could have done without about half of Forbidden Door on pay-per-view. Some of those things, frankly, shouldn't have even made Dynamite. Like MJF facing Hechicero is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I understand why they had to do it because it was MJF's hometown, and you couldn't have Roosh there, but really? That's the best you could do? That shouldn't have been on pay-per-view. MJF was the only reason why that match was there. There was other crap on that show that didn't belong there. I mean, at least like the women's matches were built pretty well, and like you had compelling, like, Forbidden Door elements to those matches. But man, there's just a lot of stuff on this show. Like, I mean, Danielson and Shingo Takagi, like in the Owen was fine. I understand why they did it there. Bryan Danielson needed to be on that show. You give him a Forbidden Door match, make it mean something. Okay. But yeah, there was just a lot there. The Jericho match I could have done without. And they realized, oh yeah, we got to get Brian Keith out of this match because, hey, otherwise it's not going to have a Forbidden Door element to it, because Shibata is technically under an AEW contract. And so they brought in Jeff Cobb. But the build to that didn't make any sense because you had Minoru Suzuki being asked by Jericho to be in that match. And it's just like, like I said, I could look at the card, but I really don't care. The big thing that I care about is fans are obsessing over the wrong type of bullshit. And it's just, stop it, okay? Just stop it. Relax. Like, enjoy shows. Like, I hate this tribalistic mentality. And I've kind of been the victim of it because AEW has kind of turned me against them in some way, because you look at the way that their product is structured, it's all about, getting cheap reactions, appealing to the internet mark crowd, doing cheap stuff to pop the people on the internet who, like the Drain Makers and the WWE Real One accounts. I mean, I'm going to start naming people off that just drive me crazy. There's an Air Gold account. It's like, listen, y'all got to stop, okay? Because that's not what pro wrestling is about. It's a community, and I love what AEW has done. It's created another platform for a lot of talented people to work. But what has happened in the last handful of weeks, months, and years, really since like the CM Punk in 2022, since CM Punk got suspended and then came back, and then obviously Cody Rhodes left earlier that year. Cody saw what was going on. They did not have a growth direction of where they wanted to be. And like, you've got to have some sort of mindset. I like the direction they're going in for All In. And I like what they're doing with Hangman Page and potentially building him, but it's just like, you've got to stop appealing to these marks. And like, Tony's got to get off of his Twitter and stop doing like random match announcements on Twitter or throwing great promo segments just as internet exclusives. It's just like, stop appealing to an internet audience. If you want to get above 700,000 viewers, you have got to stop appealing to this niche fan base that that really built your company. The whole point was growth, right? The whole point should be growth. And that's what AEW is trying to tell me. But 3 big signings this year. What have they done for you? You're in the tank ratings wise. And what are your fans complaining about? Oh, WWE has 5 matches on a premium live event. Guess what? They had almost 20,000 people in Canada. Okay. Their ratings are as good as ever. They're going to Netflix. They're doing all of these amazing things, all these international pay-per-views. And all you're complaining about is match times. Worry about more important stuff, like putting on compelling stories and trying to get your product and get more people in the building and get more people watching your show. Okay. Rant over. I was driven crazy by that, and I needed to rant about that. But thank you all for tuning in. Been doing this for about an hour. The post show here for Monday Night Raw. Exciting week ahead. NXT. Really happy for Ethan Page. We'll see what comes out of that on NXT. AEW's obviously got the Owen later in the week, and then we'll see the follow-up on SmackDown with Solo Sikoa getting the win in the main event of Money in the Bank. But like I said, let's not argue about these shows. It's like, okay, you can enjoy them a certain way, but it's just like timing match times out. It's just like, it's weird. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys real soon. Thanks for tuning in. Follow me on Twitter at OffTheMic28. Follow the show at OT Mike Wrestling. Subscribe to us here on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe. I will appreciate you forever. I I'm really passionate about this stuff. I really wanted to try and get back into doing this and having a little bit more fun, embracing my inner wrestling fan and just rambling with y'all for as much as I can, because like I said, this is exciting. It's an exciting time in wrestling. And it's like, yeah, enjoy the night. It's late on the East Coast. It's about 9:30 here in the West. Appreciate y'all. Talk to you soon. Bye.